B'shus Harav, thank you for the invitation, thank you for the kind words. To the Young Israel of Forest Hills, thank you for hosting, to the Vada Queens, everybody involved, Yashikoah, Tizku for continued mitzvahs. There's a lot to say in a half hour. And if I become a little personal and emotional, you'll understand why. But B'shus Rav, let me comment a couple words. First of all, treason is the wrong word. Treason by definition means spying for an enemy country. Espionage, perhaps. But treason, Jonathan was indicted and convicted, not by trial, a plea bargain, for giving information to a friendly country with no intention to harm the United States. Now, when they made that indictment, they didn't have to put in the second half of the sentence. But the second half of the sentence was put in without intention to harm the United States, which brings the level down a little bit. Also, it was the bombing of the Iraqi reactor that got Jonathan started. Because after that, the State Department, the defense, didn't like the fact that the Israelis bombed the Iraqi reactor, even though in retrospect it was the best thing that could have happened for the world. Because of that, they stopped giving information to Israel, information that by treaty should have gone to Israel, and that kind of started the whole process. To talk about Rav Mordechai Eliyahu is a very difficult task. You should have a refuah shlema. A man who, till a few years ago, used to make a special trip to America just to see Jonathan Pollard. He'd come in, there were times he'd come in, he'd rest a day in New York, fly to Raleigh, Durham, go see Jonathan, go back and rest, and go back to Eretz Yisrael. He's a tzaddik for many reasons, but in this case, even more. Jonathan likes to think, or hope, that possibly the reason the Rav is so sick is because he's davening for him. But he's a very special individual in many aspects, and specifically this. Let me tell you a quick story that'll give you some indication who this man, Jonathan Pollard, is, Yohanan ben Malka, who I visited, I want to say dozens of times, I can't count anymore. I was there 2 weeks ago, December 14th and 15th. December 14th, I spent 3 hours, just he and I. December 15th, I went with Shlomo Ristovsky, National President, National Council of Israel, and the Chief Rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yonah Metzger, who has visited him twice. But a year ago, I took down a different individual, who I think would perhaps give it an outside perspective. I took down a gentleman named Pastor John Hagee. You may know the name. Pastor John Hagee is from San Antonio, Texas. He's, besides his own, what they call a mega church, he has 2 minyanim on Sunday. The first one at 10 o'clock has 6,000 people, and the second one at 12 o'clock has 7,000 people, give or take. So he has an audience which is also aired across the country. In addition, he's a lover of Israel. He started an organization called Kufi, Christians United for Israel, a major factor of friend. Without going into great detail, last year at the Kufi conference, I led a contingent of Orthodox Jews. We had 100 people eating kosher at the main dinner at Kufi. And believe it or not, the only prayer services that existed that whole 3 days was Mincha and Meir before and after the major dinner. He doesn't put in prayer services, it's a pro-Israel, it's not. But Mincha and Meir we davened. We had 25 people at each. Shabbos we also have it, that was in the hotel. In any case, John Hagee, myself, a couple others, went to see Jonathan Pollard, and at the end of 2.5 hours, he walked out and he said to me, Rabbi, I'm a man of faith. That's my business. That's what I do all day. And I must tell you, I've never seen a man of faith like that person we just left inside. I turned to Rabbi Aryeh Sheinberg, who who is the Orthodox rabbi in San Antonio, Texas, very close friends with Pastor Hagee. And I said, I guess you have your speeches for Rosh Hashanah, because there was a couple days, a month before, a week before. He looks at me, Pesach, speeches. After that, I got to do tshuva. Jonathan Pollard is a man who walked into prison, not religious, but he understood me mamaking from the depths that something is wrong here. This can't be without reason. Today he is Shomer Torah mitzvahs to the best of his ability. He's in prison. He is not like, I apologize, some of the prisons that we know of in upstate New York, whatever it's called. He's a man who is being moiser nefesh for kashrus. He's being moiser nefesh for Shabbos. And may I suggest his keeping of Taras HaMishpacha in a different sense in prison is something that we should never experience. How did I get involved? There's an article that appeared to come in the papers this week. It's in the handout. It's very simple. I'm on board at the National Council of Israel about 17 years. I started going to every young Israel in the country. There was a program at Young Israel, the Lower East Side, probably about 16, 17 years ago. I went to meet them to hear their story. I asked around, too many questions, not enough answers. I started asking my poskim, my rabbis, and they said, it sounds like you've got a good case here. Go after it. In the last many years, I've sat with the sages on this side of the Atlantic. I've sat down with the sages on the other side of the Atlantic, Rabbi Yoshi, Rabbi Aaron H. Steinman, the Belzer Rebbe, the Ger Rebbe, the Vishnitzer Rebbe, on the rabbinic side. I've seen the political side. I have no answer. Yes, Jonathan Pollard committed a crime. Yes, he needed to be punished. And by the way, these are not my words, these are Jonathan's words. But the average punishment for what Jonathan did was 2, 4, maybe 6 years in prison. Not life. He got life for a lot of reasons. Casper Weinberger, I say Yimach Shemo, I don't know, okay, wrote a brief and compared him to the worst of the spies, including the walkers and everything else. He broke every rule in the book, Casper Weinberger. And because of him, he's still sitting in prison. However, why is he still there? When I took Natan Sharansky to see Jonathan Pollard, he came back and he went to the FBI, the CIA to do some own research. And because he was Natan Sharansky, he was able to get into places that none of us can get into and get out. And he told me, Rabbi, Pesach, they gave me 2 answers. One is, we don't look back. What happened yesterday, happened yesterday. It doesn't make a difference. We're right, we're wrong. We go forward, and we'll spend enormous amount of resources never having to look back. And the second answer, unfortunately, was, it's not Jonathan Pollard. It's a warning to the Jewish people, don't do it again. Jonathan paid his price. I will be restrictive on my words tonight, because the bottom line is that it's Derech HaTeva, obviously, Leib Malachim B'Yad Hashem, the heart of kings is in the hand of God, but in Derech HaTeva, tonight, the decision is up to the president. And the Pollard team, led by Jonathan and his wife Esther, and his legal team, 2 unbelievable attorneys, one from 5 towns, one from Teaneck, Shalom Shabbos, who have given heart and soul to the Jonathan case pro bono. Myself and others, we've made a very clear decision that we're going to work the system, and we're going to call the White House and push and work behind the scenes, because we want the president to make a decision, and we're not going to insult the president, to challenge the president when it's his call. But I want you to know, without getting into great detail, the White House is aware of all the calls coming in, and they must continue, day in and day out. The White House is a little perturbed, because so many calls coming in, they have to hire additional staff to man the phone. And it's like catch-22, how far do you push? But I'm telling you, I know from the inside they've had to hire more people. And the message has gone up that the people continue to call for Jonathan Pollard. At the same time, we have reached out to many people, With God's help, the Siyata D'Shemaya, we have connected with the right people. And all I can tell you now is, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fighting chance. We're there. Okay, there's discussions going on in the White House. I can't say as we speak, but there are discussions going on in the White House now about Jonathan Pollard. We reached a level that I don't think has been reached yet. And Halavai, within the next 3 weeks, we keep pushing people who have been involved behind the scenes. A gentleman named Jim Woolsey, former head of the CIA under President Clinton, right, who knows everything that's going on. He knew everything. He read every document. And he has said publicly, enough is enough. Rabbi, he did bad. But 20 years is more than enough. And we're working on it. So it's important that we continue those phone calls and we continue our tefillos. And all I can tell you is, halavai, in the next couple of weeks, we can sit there and have a Sudas Hodoya with Jonathan in Israel and us over here, or whatever the case may be. There's an article in the packet that hopefully you handed out, which I think is worth just putting in perspective. As the rabbi said, the material that was sent, that Jonathan gave to Israel, was by treaty. That's the way I understand it, and things I've heard from government officials here and in Israel. By treaty, should have gone to Israel. Israel decided after the Iraqi, after bombing the Iraqi reactor, enough's enough. They got too much information. But something that we can begin to understand, even unfortunately today with the Qassams flying left and right. Go back to the first Gulf War. Many of you may have been in Eretz Israel. You remember one morning the Israelis woke up before the Scuds got there from Iran. Okay? And guess what? They handed out 5 million gas masks to the citizens and the soldiers of Israel. I ask you, where did they find 5 million gas masks? Walmart didn't have them. They weren't open in Israel. Where did they come up with 5 million gas masks? If you were there, you had family there, you remember that they told everybody, find a room, seal it up with plastic. Why? Because they were very concerned that maybe one of those Scud missiles coming in would have chemical warhead. And chas v'shalom, if there was a chemical warhead in any one of those, it could have killed hundreds of thousands of Jews. But the Israelis were prepared. They had, they went to Germany to get gas masks because Germany built the best gas masks, but Germany refused them. They wouldn't sell them gas masks. They went to Great Britain, and guess what? They wouldn't sell them either. And so what did the Israelis do? They took apart the best gas masks and made their own. But they had 5 million gas masks ready to go. Simple question. What gave them any indication that those potential Scud missiles would have gas capability? Jonathan Pollard. That was the information Jonathan had. That was the information Jonathan gave over. The gas capability coming from that part of the world. Let me tell you a little more of an amazing story. The gas that was coming out of Iraq, where do you know where it started from?
United States.
Boca Raton, Florida. Because in Boca Raton, there was a fertilizer company, Bechtel. Remember the names George Schultz, Casper Weinberger, some of the others who had interest there? Well, they had allowed the fertilizing plant to open up on the other side of the world. A little change in fertilizer, kill a couple bugs, kill a couple people, it's just a little bit in the amounts, variations. And it would have started, if our boys during the Iraqi war would have been hurt by gas, it would have been originating from us. But the point is, that's where Jonathan Pollard started. He saw gas capability coming across his desk, told his superiors, who told him, you Jews are too worried about gas. Jonathan lost extended family in the Khurban, in the Shoah, in the Holocaust. It didn't sit right with him. Jonathan says, I made a mistake, and I want to clarify it. What I'm saying to you now, Jonathan tells me, he made a mistake. But what does he do? He goes to the newspapers that the Americans are holding back on security information. Then our enemies read the same newspapers as everyone else does. Go to Capitol Hill. He says, I was taught from day one that people on Capitol Hill are the enemy. They control the budget. You don't talk to anybody. To go to the American organizations that have me arrested. I did what I thought I could do. And he says now, he was 30 years old. He was immature in the business. He didn't know what to do. He was scared. He made a mistake. Right? He committed a crime. He says, I made a mistake. I should have found a legal way to do something someday. Okay, but that's what it is. Okay, we had a plea bargain. All I can tell you is Rudy Giuliani, when he was a member of the, when he was a federal prosecutor, said that the United States broke the plea bargain, and for that matter alone, he should go free. He had a plea bargain. He had a lousy lawyer. The lawyer was of Lebanese descent, so we figured that one out. Okay, Richard Hybe now is busy working for the Palestinians who are being sued, so he's on the Palestinian side. So it's a better question, how did Richard Hybe get involved over here? Bottom line is, the Americans last minute changed the plea bargain. Casper Weinberger added his own comments, and when he promised that they wouldn't ask for life sentence, because that's the maximum, Jonathan, very nice, I put my watch on, I forgot to look what time I started. Jonathan, thank you. So Jonathan, what happened was, the most he could have gotten for this was life sentence. Who plea bargains for a life sentence when the most you can get is a life sentence? But that's what happened. The judge threw a book in him. Different discussion. But when Richard Hybe walked out, I'm not an attorney, but they tell me the first-year attorneys know when you walk out, you go to the side, you fill out a piece of paper, intention to appeal. It's one piece of paper, it's 3 lines, and you fill it out. Well, Richard Hybe never filled it out. Jonathan Pollard only discovered that 12, 15 years later. By then, it's a little too late. As the rabbi read from Judge Lighton and some others, right? Down the road, many years later, there was a court case on Rosh Hashanah. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one judge. Another Jew, I'll think of it in a minute, was a second judge. And there was a black judge, Stephen Williams. And they didn't decide the merits of the case. They only made a decision, can he come back at this point in time? And on technicalities, Jonathan lost 2-1. 2 Jewish judges voted against him.
Oh, wow.
The black judge, Judge Williams, said this is the biggest travesty of justice he's ever experienced. And if it was in his power, he'd let Jonathan Pollard go now. On a technicality, you're going to keep a guy in prison for life? That wasn't his style. But he was the minority. Jonathan's in prison. We go through some difficult years. He was in our first year he spent a year in a prison for the criminally insane, and he's the farthest thing from it. He spent 7 years in solitary confinement, and he spent, I don't know, the balance in a medium, probably 16 years already, in a medium security prison in Butler, North Carolina. It's a wonderful place to visit as long as you get out. On the outside, it's clean and nice, but you've never seen so much barbed wire in your life. And if I tell you it's a safe and secure place, I'd be lying. Unfortunately, people are hurt and killed every day, gang wars, whatever. Jonathan is respected because they respect who he is and what he is, and he minds his own business. And that's what he is. He reads a lot. He's a pleasure to talk to. He's sensitive. He has depth. He has breadth. Let me share with you, with the rabbi's permission, I'll take a vort from last week's parsha. The Netziv, the Hamid Dover, asked the question. We know that Paro called Yosef Sofnas Paneach. Sofnas is hidden. What is Paneach? Rashi kind of says there's no other use of the word in Tanakh. The Netziv has a beautiful thought. The Netziv says Pa is from Pa'ir, Hadar, in a sense of glory, sense of excitement, Hofo'ah, and Noch is from motion. Says Paro, Someone comes up, an Eved, Moshe, Yaakov, he was away for so many years. Yosef, he was first an Eved, then he was in prison. Paro says on himself, somebody coming out of Avdus and from prison, you put him in a position of authority too fast, he'll either kill himself or go crazy. Because he can't handle it. And he saw in Yosef, in such a short time, that he was a natural. Right? Softness, hidden, paneach, the ability to move into glory, to move into honor, to move into responsibility. Because I can't see that. So the Tziv says that Paro saw in Yosef that potentially he was a great guy to begin with. He just had things stopping him in the way. Softness, hidden, paneach, the cover, the glory, the ability to move forward. When you sit down and have a conversation with Jonathan Pollard, it's a machayim. Please, a special guest. It's a machayim. He has depth and he has breadth. He can talk about. He reads 6 books at a time in the course of a week. I know because when he finishes the books, he can't keep them in prison. He sends them to me. I have his library in my garage. He's a special person. It's time that he get out and contribute. As Jonathan says, I have a legacy I want to leave for the future. And it's not the legacy that I'm presently giving. He has a lot of ideas. Trying to think to go through because I'm not looking to attack, God forbid. This president didn't do anything. The people that did it were before. I believe they were misinformed. I believe the intelligence and the defense departments, we know already, are not pro-Israel. This is a continuity of it, a continuation of it. A couple action items that I'd like to suggest. On the handout, that hopefully you have, you can pick up on your way again, is the phone number, call. If you have family and friends in New York, out of New York, get Edward to call. On the last page, on the back, is a letter that Shlomo Mistovsky, National Council President, wrote to Senator Chuck Schumer, Charles Schumer, who is being a little evasive. We've asked Senator Schumer to write the same letter to President Bush that he wrote to President Clinton, except change the titles, right? Which he hasn't done. Okay, we're calling him, we're pushing him. We don't know that he's done it, we're not aware. In the 4th paragraph, on the top, on the back of the page, you can check into Senator Schumer's website. You can email him, or send him a letter. Calls, I understand, don't really work by him. And ask him, you read a letter to President Clinton to free Jonathan Pollard. Please write that same letter to President Bush. Now, while we're talking about writing letters, let me go back to Anthony Weiner. I don't agree with everything Anthony Weiner believes in, right? But I must say publicly, when it comes to Jonathan Pollard, he's a tzaddik. Number 1, he's taking the lead. Number 2, whenever there's been a court case for Jonathan Pollard, whether Jonathan's in the court, the last 15 years that I know, where Jonathan's not in the courtroom, Anthony Weiner is in that courtroom. Right? The only elected congressman or senator who's ever been there, to my knowledge, and unfortunately, not even the Israeli government sent somebody. The last time that Jonathan was in prison, was in court a couple of years back, he had Anthony Weiner and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, who flew in special to be in the courtroom to give Jonathan Pollard physical. So for Anthony Weiner not being here tonight, it's only an indication that he couldn't make it. Because when it comes to Jonathan Pollard, Anthony Weiner is an outspoken individual. I'm trying to think some other issues to bring up. Open for questions.
Yeah, petitions. Yeah.
The petitions can be sent whatever, send them to the White House, fax them in. They're noticing them. They are being noticed, and it makes a difference. Give a shvach to Klal Yisrael. I'm getting copies of letters from Chadorim and Lakewood schools in Jersey and California. Thank God the Jewish people have woken up as an achdus, and we're doing things for Jonathan Pollard. And it is a Klal Yisrael issue, because Jonathan Pollard did what he did because he felt that the Jewish nation was in danger. And I don't know what I could do or would do if I were in his position. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to sit and talk. It was a crime. Had Jonathan Pollard told Pastor Hagee, I'll never forget this, he said, Pastor Hagee, let me give you an example of what I was up against. Okay? The president of your church comes, the daughter of the president of your church, again, it's an example, comes into you, makes a quick appointment, and tells you she's pregnant by her boyfriend. Right? And her parents want her to get an abortion. It's against everything you believe in. But you know that if you don't tell her to follow her parents' wishes, you may be out of a job tomorrow. I'm not talking to him, he's an example. Jonathan Pollard said, I was given moments' notice. I didn't have time to think. I didn't react with logic, I reacted with emotion. And I said, Israel's in danger. It's against the law. What do I do? And he says, if I had to do it again, I would do X. I would have done a legal way. I wouldn't have done it. I don't know. I should have, as his father said, I should have quit the system and then get out. Who knows? Again, I don't want it to go anywhere. He made a mistake. And we are not asking the president for a pardon. Pardon means wipe the slate clean. Now, Jonathan doesn't want that. He said, I don't deserve that. I want clemency. Clemency is give me a break for time served. I've served 24, almost 20, in my 24th year of a sentence that normally has 2, 4, 6, 8 years. That's what he wants. All right? Send me out of here. Send me to Israel. I'm not interested in getting involved in politics. I'm not interested in getting involved in anything else. I want to go home. I want to spend time with my wife who has stood by me for the last 15 years, Esther Pollard. I want to create that legacy. He's a special individual, but more than that, he represents the Jewish people. What he did, again, a crime he did for the Jewish people. It's amazing that after all this, the only place he wants to go is to Israel. It's amazing. The only place he wants to go is to Eretz Israel. You think that the people have turned their back on him. But he says, no, I want to go to the Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, to the people of Israel. That's where I belong. I sacrificed my life for that. That's where I want to go. And what can I tell you? He is a special person. Right? He needs our tefillos. We're asking of the president to make a decision and end this black mark, you want to say, on Israel-American relations. All right, to let a man go. He's not the same person he was 25 years ago. He's matured, he's changed. Congressman Schumer, when he wrote to President Clinton and others, at the time he was Congressman, Senator Schumer, he says in his book there are 3 criteria for clemency. One is unequal justice. We said that already. If you take a look in the handout, there's a chart called comparative sentences. You'll see and compare what other people convicted of a similar crime got. Nobody in the history of America has ever gotten life for spying for a friendly country. Nobody. Jonathan Pollard is the exception. And typically speaking, even spying for an enemy country. Remember the walkers? They're gone. They walked. Okay? So people who spied for the enemy country, the rarity of getting life is restricted to Hanson and, what's his name? Alder James. You know who Alder James was in the scope of this conversation? Guess who was Jonathan's superior? Alder James. Guess who wrote the victim impact statement? Which means, what did the guy do? Guess who wrote the victim impact statement on Jonathan Pollard? Alder James. Guess what he put in the victim impact statement? Everything that he was doing. The problem is, when they finally caught Aldrich Ames, Talmudic logic would tell you, go back to the victim impact statement of Pollard and see what we can figure out doesn't belong to Pollard, belongs to Ames. But guess what? It didn't happen. So the only two people that got life are the other two, right? There's three here, Aldrich Ames and Robert Henson. But Michael Walker and Clayton Lonetree, his same partner, they got 25 years and both of them are aggravated. So the bottom line is, said Senator Schumer, unfair sentence, we got. Time served for whatever he's obligated, he got. No longer a security leak. What can Jonathan know 25 years later that has any value? Nothing. George Shultz, the Secretary of State a while back, once said on the refuseniks in Israel, in Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union said we can't let somebody go, he knows too many trade secrets. I think George Shultz was the one who said if he's been out of the system for 5 years, there's nothing he knows that's important. 5 years. We're only 25 years. And Senator Schumer says if he'd be an asset to his community, be a good citizen, and he said Pollard fits the bill. So Senator Schumer has called for his release. We just want him to call for President Bush, not just to Clinton, President Clinton. So we need you for that.
Are there any Republican politicians who also support Pollard?
There's a few. A lot of people behind closed doors will support him, but when you ask them to put it on paper, it becomes a lot more difficult because they're all afraid.
Anyone inspector?
Our inspector has put it on, not on paper, but he's written to constituents that he feels enough is enough. But when you ask him to write the president, it's a little more difficult to get a response. Pardon?
Lieberman was against it all along.
And what about Lombard?
Lieberman, they had
Okay.
one.
Senator Lieberman, I believe, has changed his mind. Senator Lieberman has told people enough is enough. I have met with his, and I communicate with his chief of staff, but we can't get Senator Lieberman to make that phone call. Okay? What can I tell you? I'll stop at that. We're trying. Lautenberg is on record. But again, it doesn't mean anything if he's on record. If he won't write a letter to President Bush, please let Pollard know.
Anyone in Texas?
Texas?
No, yeah, that pastor, doesn't he, maybe he can do something.
Well, John Hagee wrote a letter to the president. There's a lot of stuff I can't say, I won't say. But there's a lot of communication going on today with some important people. All I can tell you is there's a discussion going on. Please.
I just have two questions. I've read about George Kennedy has hinted that Pollard was responsible for the deaths of U.S. agents. And my second question is, I've also heard that there are Israelis that don't want him released either. Can you tell me if there are any relevance to those two statements?
Point number one is, it's not anywhere in any written record anything about agents. Jonathan denies it emphatically. The agents you're talking about were really Ames. You track it back. And he would have been indicted for a lot worse than giving information to a friendly country with no intention to harm the United States, had there been any truth to that. Okay, and doesn't show up in any record, any discussion, anywhere. So when somebody tells me he's X, Y, and Z, and somebody said, well, he was a drug addict, you can't wake up 25 years later and tell me he was a drug addict where it's not in any form, not medical, for the last 25 years. So I'm saying on that 11, you know what? I can't tell you yes, but I can't find anybody. I can't tell you no, but I defy you to find someone who can tell me yes. Because the bottom line is that it's not on a record. They would have gotten it. The second question, George Ten. No, the second question was
Israel. I've also heard that there are Israelis, politicians that do not want him released.
Well, without going into great detail, Jonathan Pollard was spied for the Israelis. Someone had to help the Americans out to get him. Shimon Peres was, at the time, in the exchange back and forth, who was the prime minister. Shimon Peres was the prime minister at the time. foreign minister, prime minister, and when the Americans called up, was it George Schultz or whoever? No, called up and said, you know, what's going on? Unfortunately, they made it, let me qualify.
Denied it.
They didn't deny it.
It was a rogue.
They agreed to have information. There is supposedly, let me backtrack. Rabbi, you got to stop me because I'm over my time. Okay, because I'll make you a deal. The longer I speak, the harder we got to say to him. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts. Many years ago, the Knesset, which by the way, there's 120 members of Knesset. There's a petition sent to President Bush, which I don't know whether the president ever got it, but a petition was signed by 112 members of Knesset. Everybody but the Arabs. By the way, I don't think that the Declaration of Independence was signed by 112 Knesset. The original 112 Knesset members is an impossibility. There's a document out there signed in favor of Jonathan Pollard, 112 Knesset members. In any case, many years ago, the Knesset, whatever committee it was, assigned Abi Ibn, famous Abi Ibn, to do a commission and to do a survey. What happened? Do his research with Pollard. And getting back to one of the questions was, bottom line was that supposedly, in that commission, Abi Ibn wrote that when the American government requested of the Israeli government to return the documents that Jonathan stole so they could do damage control, and that was an insistence, two things happened. Number one, the Americans agreed not to use anything the Israelis gave as evidence against Pollard. We'll give it to you for damage control, but you can't use it in a case against Pollard. That seemingly was the agreement, based on the Abi Ibn research. And that's one interesting factor. The second interesting factor is when the Israelis gave back the documents, they gave back the originals. And they walked over the next day, a week, to Mr. Pollard and said, is this the document you gave? By the way, your fingerprints are still on it. So not only did they give the original documents and his fingerprints, they used it against him. But Jonathan didn't know that for 10 years or 15 years till after the court case. So you can't go back to the court case and say he has an agreement and you can't use it because it's too late. So the bottom line is there were and there are numerous Israeli government officials who are afraid that if Jonathan Pollard comes back, they're going to start asking questions. And it's better for them that he doesn't come back. However, we believe that the current situation is that the Israeli government has officially asked for Jonathan's return. Without going into great detail, we believe that's the case. There's a lot of pressure on the Israeli government there, a lot of activity in Israel on that, and as far as I believe at the moment, that's not the issue. The issue now is the defense and the intelligence, and the decision the president has to make, who he won't make on his own, he'll consult, and we have to try to make sure that our information and documentation presented that gets to the president is stronger and convincing enough, and I'll make the decision. And obviously, after that point, it's up to Hashem and our tefillos. Please.
For the question,
Two more questions, and I'll end.
I'm gonna another question or two. In the meantime, I'm gonna go to the back and get some sidurim so that people will have Tehillim and say along with us when.
Please.
When we
Yeah. And by the way, we want to thank
Akiva Kent.
Akiva Kent.
Kent. Maximum Impact Media Incorporated.
Okay, the commission from
Spring Valley, New York.
Spring Valley, New York, who is taping this, we're putting it on the web so other people can see. Hopefully it won't get me into too much trouble.
Although it is the Bush administration, first I would like to thank you for all your years, everything that you've done for Claudius.
Thank you.
Although it is the Bush administration that grants clemency, would it be in Jonathan Pollard's interest for anybody to contact the administration to be from the Obama or anybody who potential people who
Jonathan Pollard needs to be out in the Bush administration. Period. Period. That's the goal. We're not accepting anything else. God forbid it doesn't happen, ask me in a month. But at the moment, at the moment, that's all we're going for. There's no other plan, no other discussion. We're going for this president in the next 3 weeks, and with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's direction and Hatzoch and Hatzolah, will be Matzliach.
Don't you need the recommendation of the Attorney General, Michael Peggy, is supposed to be an observer?
No, you need the recommendation of the Assistant Attorney General. And the Attorney General doesn't handle paroles and clemencies, believe it or not. He's reclused himself from the case. He's not involved. We've tried to meet with him. His answer was, I don't get involved, I don't make a decision. It's the Assistant Attorney General. He won't meet with us. Okay, and we've gone, his answer is it belongs to the Assistant Attorney General. But the bottom line is enough people have called him and contacted him. In fact, his rabbi from KJ, Rabbi Lilukstein, is on record, has spoken from the pulpit and written in public about the need that Jonathan Pollard has to go free. So we've gone that angle. He refuses to meet. But he has received communications from personal friends and whatever the case may be of the importance of this issue. Hopefully, if he's asked by the president, he'll respond accordingly. But I'm telling you, if somebody can get us in, I'll be there tomorrow.
What about Ted Olson, who represented on the appeal that has Lawyers contacted him to try to...
We're in touch with Ted Olson. I'll stop there. We are in touch with Ted Olson. Former Solicitor General, I can go on. I've spoken to him a couple times myself, but he's in touch with the attorneys. It's a good question. Thank you. It means you read up on stuff. Go ahead.
If what I understand is correct, and I would ask if you would comment on this for people's edification, isn't it true that the information that he gave over to Israel regarding WMD was promised to Israel by the United States in the 74 disengagement agreement as one of the conditions of Israel pulling back and getting the Egyptian armies and certain armies out of their chokehold, where they were so close that was violated, and he saw that it was violated, much to Israel's danger.
I can't answer the specifics of your question. I don't know the exact specifics, but the point was that Jonathan said the information that wasn't going to Israel was by treaty obligated to go to Israel. It was a decision of the State Department to withhold that information.
I think it was part of that.
Could be.
And that was the condition of Israel giving up all the land and retreating after the blood they paid with. Okay. So,
David, I just want to recognize David Wepner, and I forget your title.
Councilman.
Councilman. Thank you for coming. I'm sitting here trying to think of the title. And one more, what's his title? So I figured, you know what? I got his name right, so that's good. He's always in the right place at the right time. We thank him for that. Question.
You mentioned Senator Schumer, but what has been the extent of your contacts, our contacts with Mrs. Clinton?
Mrs. Clinton has always said, talk to Senator Lieberman. But the point is, at the moment, because of her position, she won't get involved. She won't say anything. Okay? I can't justify, you know what, I'm too close to the situation to justify anybody not getting involved. As I wrote in the article that you have with you, my board has approved my getting involved. I don't think any of us imagined so long ago how long I'd be involved. And I got to give the National Council of Israel the credit and the respect that they've given me the ability to do this and other things which are not politically correct. We like to be right, not politically correct. Right sometimes means literally and figuratively. Okay? But again, it's important to make the calls. It's important to go after Senator Schumer. It's important to be Mispalo. And again, Jonathan Pollard needs to be on a plane to Israel. What day of the week is January 20th? Okay. She's got to go long enough to take a haircut and a shower and a schwitz and change her clothing and get on the plane. That's all he wants. Okay? And we'll invite everyone to a Sudos Hodoya, Mir Hashem, soon in Eretz Yisrael.
Amen.
Okay, last questions. And again, the name is Yehonasan ben Malka. His name was Yonasan. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu Shlita added the hay for Yehonasan. So it's Yehonasan ben Malka You should be in our tefillos. And I'll end up with one more, with the Rabbi's permission, one more rabbinic thought. We know from Chazal that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our job is to emulate the Almighty. Mahu Achum, Machator Achum. He's merciful, we have to be merciful. But as an extension of that Gomorrah, He feeds the sick, we feed the sick. He clothes the naked, He heals the sick, whatever the case may be. But as an end to that conversation, guys, one of God's attributes is He's Mechayim Mesi. He lets the people He relives the people that are dead. How can you and I, Basar V'Dam, flesh and bones, how do we compare to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Almighty, in the fact that we bring someone back to life? I heard a thought once, and I've used it often. If you find somebody who is so down and depressed that he sometimes wonders, is it worth being alive? If you help somebody who is so down, not depressed, okay? Life in prison, where do you get more down than that? Where do you get the closest thing to death than that? Right? If we support and help an individual who is so depressed, or in Jonathan's case, so reclused and closed up and secluded and away from freedom, if we can help him, then we too are in a sense Machayim Mesi. And you're coming here tonight, and your tefillos, and your actions, you are absolutely being mishtateh, being participating in a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ability to Mechayim Mesi. And I want you to know, Jonathan is aware, every activity gives him chizuk, and we should be zocher, with siyata d'shmaya, and the rachmanus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the rabbi can be here in 3.5 weeks, and announce in the same pulpit. I want you to know, Jonathan Pollard is on his way to Eretz Yisrael. One more thing, let me change from politics to politics. Something that the National Council of Young Israel did months and months ago was created a SMS messaging. You have a telephone and you receive text messages and you sign up. The information is on the back. Unfortunately, we will let you know every time a Qassam rocket is shot towards State Road or the south, whatever, and somebody in that part of the country is getting a Tzav Adom, a red alert, we have people that notify our computer system immediately, and you will get a text message that says a Qassam has just been launched at State Road, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and they have 15 seconds to run for cover. They're running for their lives, and unfortunately today 2 Jews were killed by Qassams, one on Friday, Shabbos, 2 today. One in Ashdod and one in some other area nearby. Right? And the message tells you they have 15 seconds to run for their lives. In the next 15 seconds, will you say a chapter to Tehillim, promise to give tzedakah, etc. When you sit like yesterday, and every half hour, this text messages get through, we begin to feel a little bit like what they're feeling like. So if you have, pick it up on your way out, share with your friends. It's free to sign up. The only thing we ask is when you get that text message, stop what you're doing and think. Think that it could be a neighbor, a friend, another Jew. You should stop and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu enough. And as they say, we need Mashiach, and we need Mashiach now. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to say some Tehillim for a little while. If you have it, if you don't have a Tehillim, it's probably the person next to you does. Here's 2 more. If somebody wants one. Anybody? Somebody here? Okay. We're going to start with Tehillim Kuf Chaf Aleph, Psalm 121. Can't tell you what page it's on because it's a different page, it's a different book. This is particular, it's a song which we say when we don't know where the help is going to come from. Ultimately, of course, help comes from Hashem. Shalom Alo, Sesoy Nailem, Amrimeya, Yidiboy, called out in Kuf Lamed from the very depths that Hashem should hear his prayers, even when it looked like no one was listening. Placed his hope in Hashem. Shiram Alos Mimamakim Torasicha Adonai Shema Lekoli Tiyan Aznecha Kashidos Lekol The song talks about how we should be saved from evil people and be protected in all situations, and in particular from Hamas, which is mentioned several times in this one. Asher Tashavu Raos B'lei Kol Yom Yaduru Milchama Shanilu L'Shonam Timon Nachash Hamas Hachshov Tachas Vasei Moselva Shavreini Adonai Midei Rasha Meish Hamasim Tinsereini Asher Tashavu L'Kos B'Amar